I'm Phillip Moore, and I was Organist and Master of the Music at York Minster from 1983 to 2008. And all my life I've conducted choirs, played the organ and composed.
Thank you so much for being here, Philip, and welcome to the
Thank
North
you.
Yorkshire Music Therapy
Thank you very
Centre. So I thought that we could start talking a little bit about you and the role of music in your life.
My father started me off with piano lessons, and then I wanted to play the organ, so I had to make sure that I was proficient on the piano before starting the organ, because there are a lot of difficult pieces on the organ which not only use the pedals, your feet, but also the manuals, as we call them. They demand quite a lot of skillful operation. I suppose because of my parents' generation, they were born in 1908 and 14, they could have been the sort of people who would have turned their noses up at a musical career, but they supported me all the way along. My father was, as well as being a good pianist, he was a good accompanist, and sometimes people came to the house, singers or violinists or wind players, and my father would accompany them. And this was something that I heard probably from my bedroom, but this all made a great impression.
So do you think that music and this rich musical environment and practice of doing music in the house, in the church or location that you were in, had an influence on your well-being as a child, on your emotional well-being?
Very much so. I think even now at my age, if I'm feeling a little anxious or frazzled, playing or conducting a choir or composing music is a great release. Music reaches the parts of the brain that nothing else reaches. That's put it very simply. And we've had a very interesting time recently with my mother-in-law, who has dementia, and she's in a care home in Norton. And she smiles happily, says almost nothing at all. But she was taken to a carol concert in the Minster just before Christmas. And watching her on a video, she was in a completely different world. She was conducting, she was just reacting to the music in a sort of way, almost as if she was taking part. And it was quite extraordinary.
So what inspired you to become a patron for the North Yorkshire Music Therapy Centre?
I've known about the North Yorkshire Music Therapy Centre for a long time. And when Atty suggested that I should become part of it, I thought it was a wonderful opportunity to as it were, to put back something that I'd been given.
As a charity, we work both in clinical setting, like special needs schools or care homes, but also in community settings. So you came in one of our Singing for Dementia group. What is your view around music in the community and well-being?
Well, I think that music obviously helps people with mental difficulties. There's no doubt about it. Seeing the session that I came to last year, it was very interesting seeing the way people reacted, and people who looked as if they didn't ever want to say anything very much, they would start talking, and it opens up fields of almost a vision in them, which helps them to, as it were, to come out of themselves. I think that's what I saw happening. I've seen children, lots and lots of children, because we, at the Minster, I was conducting the Minster Choir, which consisted of children from the ages of 8 to 14 and then adults. Children are so primed to learn that they are prepared to go through the grind, and they somehow don't seem to be so afraid of making mistakes. Whereas if you start an adult on, say, a piano, and they've never played the piano before, they often find it far more difficult to cope with the struggle. Partly because they're not learning all the time. A child is learning every day of its life, whereas we tend to stop learning, which again is why it's very good for us to continue learning, to continue doing crossword puzzles or continue reading, continuing playing the piano or the organ. But I think as far as community is concerned, I think there's a wonderfully healing aspect of, say, being in a choir. Now, when I was working at the Minster, as well as the Minster Choir, I conducted something called the York Musical Society. It didn't sing musicals, it sang big oratorios, like the Messiah, the St. Matthew Passion, St. John Passion, and various other big choral pieces. And you could see people arriving tired after a day's work, and maybe having mental struggles, who knows. And there they are on a Tuesday evening in the darkest months of the year, and going out after a day's work, singing, and then going home at 9:30 at night, refreshed. And it was wonderful to see that.
So, Philip, I'm aware that you were responsible for introducing women in the York Minster choir. Is that correct?
Yes, but with a lot of other people as well. And we realised that this wonderful experience that the boys were getting, the girls were not, except in a few isolated places. And I always remember my elder daughter at the service of enthronement of John Habgood as Archbishop in 1983. My son was in the choir, my daughters were not, and Sophie, my elder daughter, said to me many years later how really annoyed and even hurt she felt that she couldn't take part in this service simply because she was a girl. It was a difficult transition, and I think some people were critical of it, but it's now accepted that cathedrals have girls as well as boys.
Do you have any message that you would like to share with those considering music therapy or engaging in community project with the North Yorkshire Music Therapy Centre?
It's the most wonderful organisation and needs to be better known. And the more people know about us, the more people will be helped and taken out of themselves. And music is a healing art in the way that perhaps other arts are not. And music exists also when it's not being played. And so sometimes with music, people can carry the sounds that they've heard away with them and perhaps recreate them in their own minds. If it's just a snippet of a song or a phrase from an instrument. And it's the small things as well as the big things that music, for which music is so powerful. And it's important for many organisations to take part in the work of the North Yorkshire Music Therapy Centre because the good that it does is immeasurable.